Kia ora Aotearoa. Welcome whānau to the War on News, your weekly sacred cow slaughtering assault on current affairs, beamed live from the palatial Stratus news bunker buried deep beneath the heart of the Greyland Republic. If this show was a Samuel L. Jackson movie being shot in Christchurch, the pithy one-liner would be, "Get these mofo quakes off my mofo Canterbury plains." And tonight's political media crimes against reason kill zone, made up treasury figures, made up job numbers, and now the $380 million weekly debt has been purposely overblown. The phrase, "you scammy bastard," springs to mind. The reality of poverty versus Paula Bennett's Benny bashing. We don't have a youth drinking problem, we have an adult drinking problem. Plus this week's Sex in the Super City and the Wanko the Week award. Leading the war on news this week, brothers and sisters, the blogger that solo mothers frighten their children with, Cameron Slater, was tipped off by one of the troopers in the National Party Research Unit, Death Star, to a security breach that has allowed him to swipe a large amount of personal details about Labour Party supporters. What is funniest about this, however, is David Farrar's response. David Farrar, the same one who complained so bitterly and for so very long about the hollow men leak of sensitive National Party emails and who bored readers of his blog for years with how it was doing his head in, even if all the evidence pointed to him being the leak, has had a very different response to this taking of political information. It's such a different tune. It's like jumping from Rock FM to Concert FM. It's like we're listening to a different person altogether. When it happens to the Nats, it's some high order of high state crime that demands the police SWAT team bash down the door of everyone connected to Nikki Hager. But now with it happening to Labour, it's a quote, weakness in security. Astoundingly two different views from the government's chief pollster. Brothers and sisters, media bias against Hone Harawira reached new highs this week when the New Zealand Herald claimed from their own straw poll of 57 voters that Hone was only ahead by a whisker when he had 21 votes and Calvin had 11 votes. That headline should have read, "Possible Mana landslide." Then there was the Native Affairs Landline poll claiming Hone was only 1% ahead. In the poorest electorate in the country, I'm amazed they were able to find 500 landlines. Once again, the biased methodology of the polls is giving the same sort of results that claimed John Banks and Len Brown were neck and neck. Similar bias by the newspaper, who has appointed National Party propagandist and Rupert Murdoch love child David Farrar as its unchallenged online political columnist, was on display again when the New Zealand Herald reported on the latest Roy Morgan poll, which showed the largest shift in political opinion since the election last time around, yet barely featured on the Herald's news website that day. Are the New Zealand Herald seriously suggesting teachers teaching Māori? Jim, only in the South Island do they think red-rimmed glasses equates to Whit Hopkins. More media speculation, speculating on their Darren Hughes speculation, and to show balance, something dredged up about David Garrett were more important than the largest shift in political opinion in almost 3 years. When it's national ahead by 60%, the Herald can't find font big enough. The largest change in political opinion since the election? Not a peep. Brothers and sisters, sports broadcasting buffhead Murray Deaker, the Deekmeister, the Deekorama, has had to go away for a while after he referred live on air to someone working like a nigger. He used the reference in the casual way a casual racist does. He was talking about a sheep farmer and referred to him as working like a nigger. Whānau, it doesn't take a Bachelor in Arts degree to obtain the level of education that finds the use of that word grossly offensive. Children watching Sesame Street get to grasp this. If Deaker was on Are You Smarter Than a 10-year-old, he would lose. Badly. But what is much worse than Uncle Muzz's senior moment is the response from Sky TV in defending Murray. They said, "I'm not defending him, but that's a phrase that's widely used." What? Hold the phone, blocker. It's mate against mate, state against state, cockhead against shithead. Sky TV's response is that it's a phrase that's widely used. Brothers and sisters, I've been working for almost 2 decades now, and I've never heard the phrase work like a nigger casually thrown around the workplace. What does this say about the Sky TV workplace? Is work like a nigger just thrown around there, is it? Hey, while you're getting a coffee, why don't you work like a nigger and get me one too? If that's their tolerance threshold at Sky TV, that helps explain why you get greeted with, bitch better have my money when you call accounts. Epic fail, Sky TV. To the headlines, whānau. Made up treasury figures, made up job numbers, and now the $380 million weekly debt has been purposely overblown. The phrase, "you scare me bastard," springs to mind. Okay, so it turns out the Treasury predictions of our vast surge in economic growth are effectively made up, and that when you consider their track record of predictions over the last 3 years being 1.5%, 2.3% and 3.2% growth against the actuals of negative 1.1%, negative 0.4% and negative 0.1%, it would appear predicting earthquakes, volcanoes and raptures are more precise than Treasury are at predicting growth. It also turns out that the 170,000 jobs they cut and pasted from 2010's budget and promised us for next year has no actual plan to make those jobs happen. As in, there's nothing planned to measure or even benchmark or oversee or report on or do anything, and there's no policy driving towards job creation other than deregulating the labour market and lower labour costs so employers get an even better deal at the cost of workers. It really is just a number they cut and pasted. And now, a point Bernard Hickey made last month has been picked up by the attentive, and that is that the much maligned $380 million per week borrowing is that high because the government are borrowing an extra $20 billion now while the interest rates are so low. So, if we strip out the $120 million per week tax cuts and the $20 billion in forward debt pre-funding, we don't get this bogeyman debt that is justifying privatising our assets, crippling our welfare state and kneecapping our public sector. Doesn't it all seem a wee bit convenient that we've got to believe a whole bunch of fairy tale predictions and get spooked by a debt level entirely self-created and manipulated into ideologically inspired self-mutilating amputation of the state for market purity? I mean, how Catholic guilt trip is that? Moving on with the headlines, whānau. 2 very different stories about poverty this week during the public softening up for the Benny Bash. Paula Bennett was crowing about welfare households who were earning over $100,000 a year, while research showed 11,000 children in poverty each day in New Zealand going hungry. In the lead up to soft selling the crippling of the welfare state and attempting to bypass the facts Dr. Gluckman has shown us regarding the importance of early childhood development, countering the redneck knee-jerk to force solo mothers to work after their child turns 1, we have the usual Bennies are earning hundreds of thousands of your tax dollars crap rather than a headline, government agencies show usual incompetence in regard to welfare recipients. If multiple beneficiaries are living at a household and the department can't keep track of that, then that's an issue for the department. Waving around figures in the way she is, Bennett is trying to shock people into thinking beneficiaries are living high on the pig's back, right when Paula is about to kill the pig and sell the entire pig farm from under them. In the attempt to sell this draconian attack on the sick, the solo mothers, the mentally unwell and the disabled, Paula needs to rely on every nasty button-pushing dog whistle known to media. So expect more startling research from Paula that will suggest beneficiaries cause cancer, beneficiaries lower your property prices, beneficiaries can spoil milk, and beneficiaries are slowing internet download speeds. Anything to dehumanize the vulnerable and lower public resistance to their bashings will be used to keep the sleepy hobbits sleepy. What does Paula Bennett and the KFC Double Down Burger have in common? Both are bad for the long-term welfare of beneficiaries. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. We don't have a youth drinking problem, we have an adult drinking problem. What is it with rich folk hosting pre-ball drinks and then acting shocked when shit goes crazy? Brothers and sisters, I think there are two very different issues here. The latest death at King's and the wider issue regarding society and alcohol. On the first issue, I think the intense focus on these young men from these elite families at King's is now part of the problem. Without getting specific because of the sensitivities of this case, it seems that stress has come to a dreadful conclusion. We don't have a youth drinking problem in New Zealand. We do have an adult drinking problem. And when it comes to the wider debate about alcohol's devastating social impact, this government are gutless sellouts to the booze industry. If this government was serious about booze, here's what they would do. No booze in supermarkets, no booze advertising, minimum prices, and lower the blood alcohol limit for driving down now, not in 2 years. Whānau, let's stop blaming the kids and get real about the social cost of booze. Whānau, are you feeling sexy? It's Sex in the Super City time. So, Sky City bribed the government into giving them the conference centre. This is a casino masquerading as a conference centre. How desperate is this government for job growth that they've been relegated to underwriting casinos? What last canary in the coal mine is that in terms of we're scraping the bottom of the barrel now? Why not let tobacco companies start building schools while we're at it? This decision is a massive blow and slap in the face to the people of Auckland in terms of what it means for the St James Theatre Complex, because the counter proposal by the old Auckland Council and the Edge would have seen the convention centre built at the Artiers Centre while restoring the St James and moving all the arts there. What do we get instead? This gambling abomination. Brothers and sisters, this decision is a hate crime against Auckland architectural heritage. You heard me, hate crime. Whānau, let's hand out this week's Wanko of the Week award. Brothers and sisters, this week's Wanko of the Week has to go to the privatisation by stealth agenda. Whānau, I'm so sick of hearing about John Key's State House childhood. Key had welfare when it was gold-plated. Right now, it's shit-encrusted. He grew up in that rose glass-tinted New Zealand of yore, where milk was free and cows skipped to the abattoir, using that position of cosy aproned government generosity to justify crippling the current welfare state for the most vulnerable is not only intellectually bankrupt, it's immoral. But as disgusting as the Benny bashing it is merely a veneer to distract public attention from the structural change that is quietly keeping all those lobbyists who have open access to ministers so very, very busy. We are seeing what amounts to as the corporatisation of welfare, just like prisons and just like National are planning to do with education by using the national standards results as league tables to inject a false competition model into schools. John Key is to New Zealand that rags to riches aspirational piece of cheese that is forever out of reach of the mouse, forever running on the mouse wheel. He is charming his way through a stealth privatisation agenda. On the one hand, acknowledging that he is going to the election to boldly seek a mandate, but on the other hand, not actually specifying how deep that privatisation agenda runs, and as such, he comes across as decisive without ever actually explaining to any of us what his decisiveness will actually mean as he seeks to privatise government social services. We cannot, in good conscience, match up the 100,000 solo mothers mentally unwell, disabled and unemployed having to do with less while we can't find enough cash to throw at corporate welfare for Sky City, AMI, Warners, MediaWorks and South Canterbury Finance. Brothers and sisters, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. That's it for tonight, folks. Don't forget Citizen 8 plays Friday, 7:30 p.m. Freeview 21 and Sky 89. Follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook site. It has all the shows posted up online and allows you to befriend other like-minded citizens for romantic news moments. Good night, New Zealand. You stay classy out here, though. Righto.